And welcome back to Morning Express this wonderful Tuesday, the 20th of January 2015. My mind is still on 2014. And what an interesting debate we had, rather conversation we had there with Sophia Wanuna. But now we want to progress and move on to the lifestyle section. And today we focus on your health, okay? And did you know that non-communicable diseases are leading cause of death globally, with diabetes standing at a tall number 4? And Kenya is among 6 countries in Africa that has the highest number of people living with diabetes. We have a whopping 1.8 million Kenyans who are actually diabetic. And of course, this is a cause for concern. With those kind of statistics, then it becomes a matter of us asking questions and wondering, how did we get ourselves into this position, and how do we get out? And I'll also give you an opportunity to talk to our experts who are in the studio. I'll introduce them shortly. The telephone numbers are going to be showing on your screen very, very shortly, in case you're one who is living with diabetes and maybe you have some questions, or you're in a family that has diabetes and you're wondering whether you should be concerned, or matters of concern. Also, to deal with nutrition, we're going to be talking about that as well, and we'll be opening up the phone lines as we go along. But first of all, let me introduce our guest this morning, and we have Dr. Ruchika Koli. Welcome.
Morning, thank you.
Okay, and we also have Eric Ngereso, who is a nutritionist at Kenyatta National Hospital. Welcome. It's good to have you in the studio, and thank you for coming. I'll start with you, Dr. Ruchika. Yes. Diabetes, of course, is something that we have had talked about, but what exactly is diabetes?
Well, diabetes is a disorder whereby our sugar levels in the body are increased. Normally what happens is that all the proteins, the hormones, they're controlled very well in our system. But with diabetes, the hormone that's responsible for controlling the glucose levels, insulin, it's either improperly produced, or even though it's produced properly, it does not act in the manner it should. And as a result, the control of glucose is haphazard and the levels increase. And once increased above a critical threshold, we start terming patients as diabetic.
As diabetic. Okay, now once you're diabetic, what happens?
Well, you know, with diabetes, every patient presents differently. So dependent on how high your glucose levels are, you may come in either with complications of diabetes, or you may have some symptoms which could indicate diabetes but are not confirmatory. So patients can have common symptoms such as they feel that they're eating more than they normally do, or they're drinking water excessively, or they're passing urine more often than they should. Other patients may experience weight loss that they can't explain, or they're always tired, or they're getting recurrent infections. So it varies. Some patients can come in with complications. So you only find out that they're diabetic maybe if they start losing vision in one eye, or they develop kidney problems. So it varies. Okay.
Generally, would you say that Kenyans are aware of diabetes? Do we have a lot of info out there on diabetes?
I think in recent times, information is now available. More and more Kenyans are becoming aware of their health. More and more Kenyans are also becoming proactive in that they're getting themselves tested. I believe insurance companies are also taking a positive step towards ensuring that their clients are tested too. So although we do have an increased number of Kenyans who are becoming or are being diagnosed with diabetes, I think now people are becoming aware of their health, yes.
So there's awareness, okay. And what are the causes of diabetes? How does one get diabetes?
Interesting and difficult to answer in a nutshell. As we are progressing with research, we are now finding out that diabetes is actually more complicated than we thought. And there are different types of diabetes. Right. Commonly, one classifies them as type 1 or type 2. Those are the main types. And the insulin that I was talking about, it depends. You know, sometimes the body can produce antibodies against the insulin, so it is destroyed prematurely. That usually happens in younger patients who we term as type 2. In type 1, sorry. In type 2 diabetes, you have patients who produce insulin normally, but it doesn't act on the end organs as it should. So although they're producing it in adequate amounts, it's not functioning the way it should.
The way it should function. Yeah. Do the two types of diabetes present different symptoms?
No, you can have similar symptoms. It's just when they present. One presents earlier than the other.
Okay. Yeah. Evidently, either because of the information that is out there, or is there genuinely an increase in cases of diabetes in Kenya?
There is genuinely an increase. In fact, the International Diabetic Federation said that if we do not tackle the problem, it's going to become pandemic in a couple of decades. It's actually estimated that by 2025 to 2035, we're going to have more than 300 million people with diabetes. So it's not, it is on the increase.
It is on the increase.
Yes.
Do we know why it's on the increase?
Well, one important factor is lifestyle changes. I mean, we've adopted a Western lifestyle whereby now we're eating less healthy. We're becoming more lazy, if I can say that. We have a lot of convenience now. So, you know, exercise, we have cars, everything that we want is at the touch of a finger. So I think our lifestyles would be contributory to a certain sense, especially for type 2 diabetes.
Okay. And I'll bring in Eric Ngereso here. You're a nutritionist at Kenyatta National Hospital. First of all, now that you're working at Kenyatta National Hospital, do you see this reflection of figures that we have of an increase at Kenyatta National Hospital, that being the biggest referral hospital you have in Kenya?
Truly, indeed, it happens that like in a span of a week, like 80% of the patients who come to the clinic,
80%
in a week are newly diagnosed, either as coming in as referrals or one-time diagnosis. Yeah.
Okay, and she has talked about lifestyle. As a nutritionist, what contribution does our nutrition have towards the increase in diabetes?
Well, as my colleague has explained, they find that over time, during evolution, humans have made food taste better. So as in that regard, we're talking about the subscription towards salt, sugar, and oil, and therefore better taste, and therefore translating into bulky intakes. While now, given that they may not bargain on not actually compromising on salt and sugar and also fat, they also now tend to find no time to exercise, and therefore the energy intake is surpassed by it surpasses the expenditure in terms of exercise, and therefore now translating to the insulin resistance and therefore manifesting as diabetes. Now top it up with everyday stressors, depending on every person's resolutions, be it yearly or maybe monthly. So you'll find that they tend to chase for more than they could handle, and therefore the overweight and obesity, top it up with stress, it nearly now translates to the diabetes at hand.
Okay, now for the common mwananchi who's just listening and they have their ugali, they have their rice, they have what foods, when you talk about sweeter foods, for example, what are those?
Well, as of now, convenience is the message that is really transpiring in most homes. So you're looking at the fries, quick fix options, sodas, mandazis, commercial juices or such. So all these are meant to to energize you faster as you pursue your day-to-day's interests. So in this regard, you find that depending on how they've been prepared, they are richer in energy than now would be the case whereby you would actually work with the usual traditional foods, like so talk of the ndumas, muhogo, and posho meal, the ugali for that matter. So as in the rice in processed foods is actually now the challenge on the ground.
Okay. Dr. Ruchika, let me bring you in here. And there are certain myths that surround diabetes. For example, that if I take a lot of sugar in my tea, I will get diabetes. If I eat a lot of chocolate, if I eat sweets, I stand a higher risk of getting diabetes. Is this true?
Well, everything in moderation is what we actually advise. So yes, if your sugar intake is excessive, you're increasing your risk. But not to say that that's the only risk factor. There are other risk factors that would predispose you more than maybe the next person to developing diabetes. For example, if you're already overweight, or if you don't exercise enough, or if you have a family history of diabetes, if your parents or your siblings has diabetes, or as my colleague has mentioned, if you have other stresses, if you have other comorbid conditions like hypertension, or if you have abnormal lipids, they all increase your risk. So it's not just one isolated factor, it's a combination. But of course, excess sugar intake would be contributory in the long term.
Okay, and are those the same things that you have between type 1 and type 2?
Type 1 tends to develop earlier, so it's diagnosed mainly in children. So they are not exposed to that risk as much as those with type 2. And type 2 is more common, so that's where the risk factors are more important actually.
Okay. And there's a general increase in diabetes in children. What is the cause for that? Is it the same factors of lifestyle? Because children seem to be on the increase and at younger levels.
Yes.
You have even very young children as young, below 10,
Yes,
who have
yes.
diabetes.
In children, it tends to be type 1. Now, in type 1, there's actually, you have insulin, but it's not produced in adequate amounts. So now we know that the body produces antibodies against this insulin. So it's an autoimmune disorder. So there's premature destruction of insulin. And as a result, because there's not enough insulin to cope with the amount of glucose in the blood, they tend to have higher glucose levels and thus manifest as diabetes.
Okay, maybe for some of us who may not understand really, what is the difference between type 1 and type 2? Because type 1 seems to manifest in a certain age group and type 2 a different age group. What actually is the difference between the two?
Okay. Type 1 is insulin deficiency. Your body does not produce enough hormone, which is insulin, to combat your glucose or to regulate your glucose levels. Type 2, insulin is there, but it's insulin, your body is insulin resistant, meaning although it's present, it can't act as it should. As it's supposed to make sure that the glucose is taken up in the cells and stored, but it can't do that because there's a resistance to it. So that's the difference. One is deficiency, one is resistance.
All right, we have Dr. Robert who would like to contribute. Dr. Robert, thank you for calling. Your contribution, sir?
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Yeah, thank you. I see you have a very nice discussion in the studio.
Thank you.
I wanted to contribute one on...
Dr. Robert, Dr. Robert, would you kindly turn your television off? The volume of your television, or turn it off completely.
I wanted to contribute on the management of diabetes according to diet.
Yes.
I'm a general practitioner in Nairobi, but one of the challenges we have around here is coming with what I can call a Kenyanized or an average diet that you can advise on a patient who's having diabetes. One thing that most of the foods we consume are not, we don't measure them in calories at our home. We just put what we think is enough. And even that's what we give our patients, that's what maybe we eat at home. And then two, the charts or the treatment that you can advise patients are not meals that we consume regularly in our village homes or the towns in Nairobi. Sometimes, like in my case, I actually tend to come up with a manual that I think suits my patient.
Okay.
Is it possible, like from the new question from Kenyatta, how can these patients who are having diabetes get a chart or a treatment or maybe a teaching about the local foods that they can eat to manage their diabetes, without relying on those charts that contain westernized foods or food that are not easily available in their locality?
All right. Thank you, Dr. Robert.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, Dr. Robert, there with some valid points. And Eric, the question is it possible to have a chart that has localized foods?
Yes, indeed. As in, like at Kenyatta National Hospital, you'll find that in giving nutrition recommendations, they're actually individualized. So like before even issuing of the chart, you actually first discuss on the patient's background in terms of what he or she has access to, and then now from there you develop a plan ideal in his or her context. Because you'll find that besides just issuing the chart, you also need to do your own nutrition diagnosis to also find out whether him or her is overweight or obese. So out of the same, you'll find that besides the diabetes as the manifesting challenge, weight loss also becomes part and parcel of the objectives to be addressed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Richiko, you mentioned weight as one of the things that somebody should be concerned about when they are looking at diabetes. Is there an ideal weight, or how does somebody tell?
You use your body mass index. Based on that, it's stratified into those who are underweight, normal, overweight, or obese. So any individual who's either overweight or obese is a risk.
How do you get the body mass index?
It's your height over your weight, and it's a formula which is widely available.
Is it something you can do at home, or do you
Yes.
have to go to a center to have that done?
No, you can even do it at your own convenience, even in your own home.
How do you work it out?
You take your height, you can either take it in inches or you can take it in centimeters, and you divide it over your weight. Usually it's in kilograms, your weight is squared, and then you get your body mass index. 25 to 30 is considered overweight, more than 30 is considered obese. So we aim between 19 and 25, because under 19 now we say you're underweight.
You're underweight.
Yes.
Okay, Eric, we've talked a lot about nutrition, and we're talking about weight here. Does exercise have any role when it comes to managing diabetes or avoiding diabetes?
It has a very important role in that besides the weight loss, it's also a stress control entity. Because as you exercise, you're also looking at your stressors, be it the diagnosis at hand, family, or maybe work-related stress. Now, in the context of weight management, you'll find that you are trying to balance how much you put in your system and also burn the same. Otherwise, you'll find that even with the initiation of treatment for diabetes, if a patient does not take charge of his or her weight, risk of also becoming overweight or obese becomes near obvious. And therefore now it actually may tend to increase the risk of also now progressing from either the use of oral tablets to even now initiation of injections. So that's why you'll find that in the overall care, number one issue is you must lose weight, or if you have an adequate weight, therefore maintain. Yeah.
Okay. Now, Dr. Ruchika, in Kenya we practice what I term, or I call, the poor man's disease, or poor man's medicine. And poor man's medicine, to just describe it, is where you go to hospital because you must, because you feel you're sick. And we've talked about the symptoms that are there for diabetes, but sometimes some of these diseases are actually hibernating, and we only discover when they've progressed so far. If I was at home and I just wanted to do a regular check, or just to know once in a while, is there a way I can check whether I am diabetic or tending towards diabetes?
Correct. I think we do need to move away from reactionary medicine to actually preventative. Obviously, if you have risk factors, if you have a family history, if you're overweight, you have high blood pressure, or you have some of the symptoms that I mentioned, the weight loss, the excessive drinking, you must get yourself tested. If you're asymptomatic, you don't have any risk factor, then it is recommended that you get regularly checked past the age of 40. That's the guidelines that we have. So it's individual, depending on your background or your symptoms. But as a rule now, if you have none of that, 40 and above, get yourself tested.
Get yourself tested. Must I be tested in a hospital or a center, or can I do this at home?
Ideally, it would be best that you get tested in a laboratory which has good testing facilities. We do have a lot of what we call point-of-care machines for glucose testing, meaning the home care devices. But when you're getting your first test, it's best to do it in a laboratory that you know has a reputation to be able to conduct a good and accurate glucose test.
And recently we've seen self-test kits that are there, which you can take home and just test for yourself.
Yeah.
Do you recommend these? Do they give you an accurate reading? Can you go by that?
They are very good if you are a diabetic who needs close monitoring, because it's convenient and you can do it at your own time. However, we don't advocate that that should be the sole monitoring device. So if you're using your own device, it's best that at regular intervals, dependent on how closely you need to be followed, you do come into a laboratory and get a test done. You can't solely depend on these home devices because at times they're not as well quality controlled as the tests in the lab are.
Okay. We have somebody from Bungoma. Hello. Hello, good morning. Please put your TV off. Okay, I think we've lost that call. Eric, there might be somebody out there and wondering, sometimes weight loss is not an easy process. And again, depending on how far, how obese you are, or how close you are to your ideal, what do you call it, body mass index?
Yes.
For somebody who's, very obese, even exercise might be a problem. Where does one start their exercise regime and their diet? Because also this body, being a big body, maybe requires a lot of energy to run. And that's why we are now resorting to these fast energy foods which are available. I try maybe to stay a certain number of hours without eating, starving my body. But now when I get the hunger, I will eat anything because I need it right there and then. Where does one begin?
So as in, you'll find that depending on the level of obesity or overweight that the patient has, you'll find it's a journey. Because this weight has been accumulated over the years. And therefore, for a successive loss, the patient must also be patient. Because you'll find that they may also now want to think of quick fix options which are unavailable. But also, you'll find that the industry outside the medical system is also ready for them. As in, they may tend to propose quick fix options which are also detrimental to their health. So as in, be patient as a patient. We discuss through your dietary requirements. You understand that you're not starving you, but as in looking at your future today, and therefore you must be part and parcel of the same. Otherwise, you'll find that you may also have end time surprises that also even your pension is also being tied to your health. So, I mean, diluting while you're working hard over these years. So in this regard, it's a journey, and therefore as a team approach, you'll find that with the nutritional advice, and then top it up with be it exercise, experts in exercises, then you're able now to link it up to get to see how is your journey. So you may not actually pair up and say, I'll do it like him or her.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We have Irene. Irene, good morning, and thank you for calling. What's your contribution, Irene?
Naitwa Mama Irene Mronji. Swali langu linakuja kwa Dr. Lichika.
Okay.
Kwamba wana mikakati gani ya kusimamisha hii ugonjwa ya diabetes. Mimi ni diabetes type 1 na nimejaribu sana kukula hiyo vyakula ya kienyeji kwa sababu mimi ni mama kutoka tu mashinani. Niko na hiyo chat, lakini huwa sipati nafuu. Na 2030 amesema atakuwa na wagonjwa wa diabetes utakuwa wingi sana. Wanaweza kukuja na chanjo yoyote ya kureduce hii diabetes if they are understanding that.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Irene. We'll take another call from Githinji. Githinji, thank you for calling. What's your contribution?
Hello?
Hello. Yes, Githinji.
I was saying, my blood sugar level. Hello?
Yes, your blood sugar level.
It actually fluctuates. Depends on the class. So how can I know it is low or it is high?
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Githinji. Thank you. Okay, two questions coming in there for you, Daktari. And we have the lady who called from Mashinani. She says she has type 1 diabetes and she takes the kienyeji food and yet it is not healing. And the second question, still from the same caller, is can we have a chanjo? Can we have an injection that can deal with diabetes?
Yes. If she has type 1 diabetes, it would be very interesting to know that in addition to diet, what medication is she on? Because, first I'd be interested to know, is it really type 1 or is it type 2? Because with type 1, you do need insulin replacement, either in the form of tablets or in the form of insulin injections. So yes, there is injectable treatment already available. And actually now we're trying to move away from the non-invasive devices because it's very difficult to inject yourself every day, several times a day. So now, we're trying to evolve to getting either aerosol, insulin, or non-invasive devices to take your medication in addition to tablet forms. And then she mentioned 2030 that we'd have many cases what we're going to do about it. I think that's what we're doing here already, trying to make patients aware, individuals aware, get yourself tested, know your status, so to speak, and if you are somebody who is at risk or already diabetic, take proactive steps to ensure that your sugar level is controlled within the strict guideline as advised by your healthcare practitioner.
All right. We also have now Githinji who asked about his fluctuating.
Again, I would have to ask him more questions. When he says fluctuating, what does he mean? Is he a patient already with diabetes? Is he on medication? Such a patient would need a proper diagnosis. So if his levels are fluctuating, when do they fluctuate? How high do they go? And do we need to take some external intervention? Does he need to be put on insulin replacement so to normalize his
stabilize
glucose
it.
levels. Yes.
Okay. Yes, Eric.
Yeah, maybe to respond to the lady from Mashinani, you'll find that in as much as the recommendation could be on our traditional foods, quantity also matters. And what also may influence the amount of food she may be serving is also how tasty she is also prepared it. So if it tastes better, though, local, as you may use the word, she still equally eat more. Now also tally it up with, her stressors besides the food itself. The stress also could come from the diabetes, because if you check your sugars, then now you're not actually happy about it, yet you're not actually being patient to understand the circumstances surrounding the fluctuations. Then, don't expect results unless you've also invested to learn about what is my context.
So what you're saying is that it's not just the diet, but also the quantity.
The quantity.
Is there a way I can measure quantity? Because we're all different. The amount I eat, I'm sure, is very different from Sophia Wanuna, what she eats. I've seen on the breakfast table. But anyway, is there a way I can measure?
So you see, now in that regard, you'll find that that's why, individualized plans are discussed one-on-one. So the question is also asked whether she also has had a session with a nutritionist to also have the background addressed. Now, besides that,
ukiwa mashinani, you may not have access to a nutritionist.
And that's why you'll find that case referral gaps also influence, proposed outcomes. So and that's why, upon diagnosis, refer however much the distance it could be. Because you see now, it also, comes back to us as healthcare professionals. Do we use the right channels as desired? Now, in developed nations, you'll find that people have got even weighing scales, scales for measuring food in their houses. But now, locally, based on the advice, we talk about using cups, which are now as in the clinic for demonstration. So that now you leave knowing. Now, at KNH, we are also looking at a situation whereby we are going to come up with a center for demonstrations. We talk about it, you also attend a session, seeing how it's done to reflect it at home. Yeah, so it's not about what is being done to like, what she was saying about a vaccine for diabetes. It's about how you as a person, you must not be a statistic. The thing is, be responsible to self.
All right. Dr. Ruchika, is there anything that's being done? Because I'm sure in the urban areas we have more centers, we have more doctors, we have more access to information, but there are those who are deep in the country where there may not be that access of information, power, doctors, centers. Is there anything being done to reach those, especially in regards to educating them about diabetes?
Yes. There are attempts. We have the Kenya Diabetes Association. We do try and educate patients through the reports that we give them on our lab reports. So although there are attempts made, there's room for a lot of improvement. I agree with you that focus initially tends to be in the urban areas than outside. But I think as we become more aware, people ask more questions, with the use of social media, which now everybody has some form of access to. I think there's room for a lot more to be done, a lot more education. Of late now, we're even celebrating World Diabetes Day. A couple of years ago, nobody even knew the date. But I think the awareness is increasing, but definitely there's a lot more that
can be done. Let's concentrate on now, or focus on diabetes on children. How young can one be to have diabetes? Is there an age limit?
There are some genetic causes of diabetes as well. So a child can even be born with diabetes. So there is no age limit. It's very rare, though, to get those genetic defects in your insulin. But we have seen cases. They are present, though rare. So yes, as young as birth.
Okay. Mary in Nairobi, thank you for calling. Your contribution, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, because one time I went to a clinic here in Nairobi, and it was around 4 p.m. I think I was full, and they decided to test me because I'm on high blood pressure tablets. So the doctor told me I was 9 point something. Actually, I got mad. I didn't like it. I think I was stressed. So I was given some drugs, which I came with, but I didn't take because I didn't accept that I had diabetes. So I called a doctor friend and asked her how can I go about it. And she told me that I was not supposed to be tested at around 4. It's supposed to be very early when your stomach is empty. And when I asked about the drugs, I told her I didn't want to take the drugs. She told me then, I think what you can do, because I'm a bit weighty. So she told me to go to the gym, try to tone down if I don't want to take the medicine, and then thereafter I should be following my weight and then the blood sugar. So the next time I went again to the same hospital, because that's where I go, I'm covered there. They decided I need to be at 4. I told them, I was told that it should be in the morning. So can I come in the morning? The doctor said, no, let me just do it because it doesn't make any difference. So this time I was 7. And from that time, I've not taken the medicine. Is it okay? Because I really don't want to take the medicine. Because I was told once I'm on medicine, I'll continue forever. And that's what I don't want because I'm already on high blood pressure drugs.
Okay.
But I try to do traditional food, the ndomas, the meal for breakfast. And I've discarded chapatis and mandazi. So am I on the right path?
All right. Thank you very much, Mary. Dr. we can start with you on that. Is there a specific time that one should be tested?
Yes. Okay. There are very different tests that one can use to actually diagnose diabetes. The main test that is used is what we call the fasting sugar. So agreed, it's done after an overnight fast of 8 to 10 hours where we advise the client not to take any food. They can just take water. And they come into the lab and we do a fasting sugar. Again, there are critical levels of your glucose levels at which we say you are diabetic or you are at risk of diabetes. If your level is above a critical value, for example, we say if your fasting is more than 7, you are diabetic, and now we will start managing you as such. If it is less than 7, we ask, come in again, the next day, have a repeat fasting. Now, in the case of Mary, she had what we call a random blood sugar. You just walk in at any time you've had a meal. If your values are outside what we call the normal reference ranges, in which case 9 is, we definitely need her to come in for a fasting sugar to try and find out when it's controlled and it's done under a controlled environment, how high is her sugar. So she needs further testing.
Okay, so now when it goes beyond 9, does that mean she is diabetic, or the second test would be confirming that she is?
If it's 9 on a random, the way she had it, no. We wouldn't call her diabetic outright. We'd have to further investigate by doing a fasting to determine now, is her fasting above 7 or not.
Okay. She also mentioned something here which I'd like to find out if it is true, that she was told by a friend or somebody that if you start taking the medicine, then you'd have to take it forever. Is that true?
Ideally, once you are on medication, the aim of putting you on medication is because your body is unable to regulate the glucose itself. So it needs external help, which is in the form of medication. Most patients tend to be on medication for long term. Yes, usually it could be for life as well. But the aim is to try and ensure that the dose that you're on doesn't increase, or that you don't progress from oral medication to injectable medication. So once you are on medication, you require regular follow-up to see how well that medication is working for you. Does your sugar level come down? Sometimes there are patients who, maybe they were just not diabetic. Nowadays we have what we call pre-diabetes as well. So you haven't reached diabetic yet, but you're on your way there. So some of those patients are put on medication. But as you follow them up, you realize, okay, maybe they don't need the medication at that point. But that's not to say that that's it, we can let them go away. They still have to be closely scrutinized, meaning regularly, every 2 weeks to every month, they come in and get a test to make sure that they're not missing on a medication.
All right. We have Nicholas Koech from Kisii. Nicholas, thank you for calling. Your comments or question?
Good morning, sir.
Morning to you, Nicholas.
I'm happy to work next KTM.
Thank you. Welcome home.
I'm concerned about the innocence of our people undergoing.
Nicholas, would you kindly turn your television set off so that we are able to hear you?
Hello.
Yes, Nicholas, kindly turn your television off.
Men, on the issue of diabetes in our country, people are so ignorant about the awareness of diabetes. I just wanted to ask the guest from the studio today how the mechanism so that they can educate people on the ground. Because I'm sure most of the people are able to learn from today's talk.
Okay.
If possible, we can organize the camp.
Okay. Okay, Nicholas, your line is not very clear. We'll have to disconnect the call, but I think I got part of your question, and it's a question asking on the mechanism. Do we have mechanism to reach with the people on the ground? I think you had answered that previously, but maybe I can go to Eric. And Eric, is there anything in terms of nutrition that is being done mashinani?
Well, I think with the current devolution, we expect that at least messages will actually be brought to the Mwananchi on the ground. Although the challenge is the nutrition vote as part of the national entity is also wanting. So in that regard also it calls for public-private partnerships to also now, deliver the impact to the common man. Otherwise, as of now, one time or even, international driven occasions are actually what prompt in dissemination of information. Otherwise, there is so much to be done.
All right, thank you very much. And I want to chime in Sophia Wanuna, who is also with me in the studio, to just give us some of the responses that are coming in. Sophia.
Yes, Michael, and you did ask guys to also send in messages. And there's one from Wanjiro who's calling us from Nairobi. She says, I'm obese and lactating mother. I have tried to diet. I find breakfast, or rather breast milk, reduces and my child starves. Please advise, because I bought a slim tablet for slimming, but I couldn't tolerate the headache. That's Wanjiro. So lactating mother, trying to diet, but finds that reduces the milk, has tried a diet pill, but then that comes with crazy headaches. What do you say to that?
Well, I would say that she has a self-driven effort that actually is non-guided. So in this regard, you'll find that rarely will you find there being a nutrition prescription in the name of a slimming pill. And mark you now, in as much as you're open into internet space, you can Google out anything. Now somebody presents his or her opinion in their context, and then now you equally emulate the same, like say what they're calling diet soups and all that. So eventually now, it could actually be a wrong option to choose. Yeah. What I may advise is she comes over, we discuss, not just necessarily in Kenyatta, but in out of any of the possible facilities of healthcare around, till the nurse is guided adequately in regard to her context.
Okay.
Yes, and mark you now, like the reduction in milk production is actually out of the stress related to the idea of losing weight. Because you may find that, like say, cabbage soup, as majority may want to opt for, is simply now like water, and therefore you like dehydrate more and yet to make milk.
Yeah. Would you say working out can help, so she can still eat her normal stuff, but work out to keep healthy?
Yeah, working out is an option, number one. And then number two, on her diet, the taste should not be obvious. Otherwise, if the food tastes the same way, she may actually bargain not to go to exercise, yet she wants to clear the usual quantity, so she cannot get there.
And doctor, there's one more person here who wanted you to repeat the formula on checking the weight. I guess the
body mass index?
Body mass, yeah, BMI. So how does one go exactly about it?
You can actually even Google it. There are so many calculators available online, but it's height over weight squared.
Height over weight?
Yes, height over weight squared, or weight over height.
Well, weight in kilograms divided by height in meters squared. Yeah. Weight in kilograms, so like it's going to be 70 kilograms divided by 1.7 meters squared. So the ratio you get will actually
give you. And what is termed obese?
More than 30.
Yes.
More than if you get more than 30, that's obese.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
All right,
and healthy?
19 to 25 is normal.
Okay. And is there anything below? Is that a matter of concern?
Yes. Yeah. Underweight is.
Underweight.
Yeah.
Okay. One more maybe from Marcy here as well. I recently tested for type 2 diabetes. She says I'm overweight and my dad has diabetes as well. I'm now working on my weight, but since the change of diet, I feel weak. Why is that happening, Mercy?
Well, one, maybe you're not taking in enough that you should. Maybe your diet is excessive, so that's why you're probably feeling weak. Again, sign of weakness is also, is also a symptom. So she needs to get checked. But maybe you can advise more. Maybe she's overcompensating on not eating.
Yes, so as you'll find that carbohydrates serve the purpose of energy giving.
Correct.
And you'll find that in majority of quick fix options, they are nearly deleted. And therefore, in that regard, you'll find that, feeling weak becomes obvious. And now mercure, it may end up in a process whereby now the body tends to catabolize, as in break down its own tissue, eventually now also leading up to the build-up of toxins within. Therefore now, explaining the lethargy experience.
Okay. Maybe just before, as we wind up, Eric, we've talked about stress being a contributing factor to diabetes. Are there stress-relieving foods and foods that maybe cause stress?
Well, stress is twofold. You may find that when him or her is stressed, either he could quit food or get soothed by eating. And now majority, not really majority, but both sides of the divide, you find that him also who would want now to eat to quench the stress as per se.
Food here being a stress reliever.
You'll find that junk options, talk of the cakes, the sodas, for that matter, which now also give you energy. You see now they're trying to mask from the problem, and therefore now they tend to eat more. One, either out of the frustration that they didn't succeed in losing weight, so let me eat what has been my case, and therefore now he or she may feel relieved of the stress. But ideally you'll find that when your body is energized and then top it up with exercise, you disconnect from your stressors. Okay. Yeah, so as in, and now the blanket advice would be as in, people should learn to handle to their capacity. Otherwise, you see now, for him or her also who withdraws from eating, the moment he'll eat, he revenges what he missed out. Again, also translating to the obesity at large.
Okay, Dr. Ruchika, there's risk sometimes in, like you mentioned and said, over-dieting, over-compensating. What's the ideal way to know how to diet? And are diets advisable?
Okay, I'm not an expert on nutrition, but from a personal perspective, I would say no. I would not think that your own crash dieting is the way to go. It would be more advisable that you actually implement something that you can manage and that is sustainable. So if you say that, like Eric has mentioned, reduce the amount you're eating, increase the amount of non-starchy or non-fatty foods. I know there's a lot of focus on, increase the number of vegetables that you eat, reduce the amount of fatty meat, introduce lean meat. One of the other sayings is, don't drink your fruit, eat your fruit. So make something or prescribe to something that is manageable for you on a long-term basis. Most of the time you find individuals doing something, they'll say, I'm only going to be on water and watermelon for 2 weeks, and then, they reach an ideal weight, they feel comfortable, but then they can't sustain that over long periods. So I would not advise on crash dieting.
Thank you very much for your time and also for your information that is very, very valuable. We really appreciate it. Thank you. And Sophia, we are now concluding.
Yes, we are indeed. And thank you both for joining us this morning. Great discussion there, also just answering some of those questions from our guests. We appreciate you being with us. As we wrap up, just remind you the question of the day. Earlier on, we're engaging with you, of course, over the incident yesterday at the Langata Primary School, those demonstrations, but most of the tear gassing of the pupils. Of course, we just spoke earlier to the Law Society of Kenya chair, that's Eric Mutua, who did indicate yesterday they've set up an 11-member team to look into this particular issue. But also some of the sentiments that came through was ODM Secretary General Ababu Namwamba saying the president needs to apologize. And so we're asking you now, question of the day, do you think President Uhuru should apologize over the tear gassing of those pupils as ODM is demanding? And this is what some of you have to say. We have Khan, who's in Nairobi, saying, no, the president should not apologize. Why should he for others who caused the trouble? ODM should stop dragging the president into such issues and allow him to do his job for the good of the nation. Let me get a yes here. There's a yes. The president must apologize so that his government is not viewed as that of the apartheid regime of South Africa in the 70s. Let's see another one. There's another no here. No, the president should not apologize. Policemen should carry their own cross. They should be sacked. That's what Kungu in Ruiru, who's watching, is saying. Then there's another yes here. Yes, he should, and if possible, suspend those policemen who are on duty because they don't know how to use their weapons as allowed. Douglas Simiyu from Bungoma County. So thank you so much for your feedback. Although Douglas, the policeman in charge, or the officer, OCPD if you like, in charge of that particular contingent that was deployed was interdicted or suspended if you like, and we'll wait to see what will happen thereafter. So those are some of your thoughts, and Michael is now with me at the anchor desk.
Absolutely. And well, what an interesting show. A lot of information, getting to know the LSK chair a little bit more, and also, you know, putting him on the spot on some of the things that he's been saying and what's been going on, and also taking care of our health. I've enjoyed it.
Me too. It was thoroughly great. And on behalf of everyone that made the show possible, we thank you so much always for joining us. We would not do this without people watching at home. So when you call in, when you text in and ask questions and engage with us, it really is a pleasure. It gets us to know we are not talking to ourselves.
Yes, and they say the first sign of madness is talking to yourself. Or looking at your palm, waiting to see whether there's hair. Okay, that's the second one, which you haven't done. But talking to yourself is...
I do not.
Don't look at me like that. I'll teach you on this thing.
Teach me.
Yes,
okay.
I will.
Well, thank you. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a lovely day. I'm Sophia Waduna.
I'm Michael Gitanga. Have yourselves a great day. God bless.